Hey, welcome back to At Home with Chic and Grace. So I've had this idea for quite some time to make some vintage looking plates out of wood, so they're not really plates. So when I found this, the Cathrina transfer from IOD, I thought that these would be perfect on tiny little plates. So I've already picked out 3 of them that I'm going to do, but you're seeing 2 big ones that I've also cut out and another small one that I have other ideas for. So those ones we won't be doing today. We're just going to focus on 3 small ones. So I just want to take a second and flip through the transfer book with you because there's so many cute ones and I have some more great ideas. So those are the 3 that I've chosen. And look at those birds. I already have a project in mind for them. There's so many beautiful florals in here. I had a hard time choosing, but I am happy with the ones that I chose. So there's, I think, just 2 groupings of birds in this one. So I have 2 of these transfer books, so I'll be doing a couple different things with these birds. Okay, so we are going to get started here. I'm using Fusion's Casement mineral paint is what I'm using. And I think I ended up giving these 3 coats. Now I'm using a brush. I know a lot of times you see me using a sponge, but this time I've decided to use a brush, and you will get your paint down in the grooves on the scoring around the plate. I was okay if I got it in there a little bit because I want these to look like old plates. You'll see what I do to get more of it out here shortly. So I'm just going to fast forward here and we will get these painted up. Okay, so you can still see the engraving. However, it got a little bit too much in there. I was a little on the sloppy side with it. So I just took an X-Acto knife and just carefully, after each layer, I went around and cleaned it quickly. So I am also going to paint the inside rim, and we will paint the outside rim, but you don't need to worry about that until you have it glued together. Trust me, I've spent time doing it separate and then gluing it together and having to do some sanding and whatnot. You might as well just get it done once these are glued together. Okay, so I have about 3 coats of paint on these, and I do have these transfers taped into place. I like to put the frame over the top to see exactly how they're going to sit first before I make some decisions. Now, this one I had to cut apart. I just wanted to show you, don't be afraid to cut your transfers apart. I'll save these pieces because I'll use them in other pieces. Now you could have left them on, but I felt like you weren't seeing them. Why waste them? I might as well save them in case I needed them for something else. So we're just going to get started here. This process is relatively easy. I'll apologize in advance for not always being in frame 100%. I'm not at my regular filming spot, so I'm using my phone and really not used to where it's sitting, even though I thought I had it right. So your transfers, they come with that transfer stick. So you don't have to put a ton of pressure on. I will note that I am using Fusion Mineral Paint. It has a built-in sealer, so you do not have to seal before you transfer. If you're using this on chalk paint, or acrylic paint. I'm not sure, I haven't tried it on acrylic paint yet, but you would want to seal first, just with something um, like you could just use a spray varnish, or you could use a brush on varnish sealer. So just gently pull back your paper as you're peeling, and it will release very easily. And then just take your paper that you just pulled off, and we're just going to burnish your transfer in. So I'll continue on the rest so that you can see that process again sped up. Okay, so they're all done, and oh my goodness, I'm so happy with them. They turned out even better than I was imagining. So I'm loving them like this, but of course, we're not going to stay with them just plain. I did off camera um, do one of them because I was just trying to decide exactly how I wanted them to look. So now we are ready to work on the next two, and I'll show you exactly what I did aside from two steps, but I will explain that. So the first thing I want to do before we start adding anything on is seal them up. So I'm using Dixie Belle's Dead Flat. Actually, before we do that, I want to take a piece of sandpaper and just lightly, very lightly, just scuff them up. I just want them to look a little bit more vintage. So typically when you're sanding your transfers, you should sand your light pieces first and then your dark pieces, because some of your dark will transfer onto the light. I didn't really have that issue here, but what I did have happen is some of the pieces I sanded off caught that micro edge of the transfer. It is so subtle, you can barely see it. I just took a baby wipe and I just wiped off any residue that was left there. And then I did start or do the next one, and I just went right over it. I didn't even bother starting on the white pieces first. And then again with a baby wipe. And then once those are dry, then we are ready to put the Dead Flat sealer on. You don't have to use Dixie Belle Dead Flat. That's just what I'm using. You could go and use a Krylon or Rust-Oleum spray. You can use matte, satin, whatever you're wanting. I just like the matte. We are going to add a sheen to this afterwards because they're going to look like vintage china plates. Okay, so our sealer is all dry, and now we need to glue them together. So you're going to see me fussing with this plate a little bit. It is cut to fit an exact way. I had it lined up and then I moved it when I was going to glue it. So you just put it on and make sure all of your edges match. So you'll see me fumbling around with that a bit. I like to put glue all the way to the edges so I have no separation at all. So here is going to be one of the first steps that I have already forgotten to do. In my sample that I did, I had taken gold and put it on the inside of the rim first so that I didn't have to worry about that afterwards. But it actually ends up working out just fine, and you will see that here shortly. So now that it's all lined up, just make sure you clamp it. And every time I put the clamp down, I just try to make sure that nothing has shifted, especially because I had quite a bit of glue underneath it there. So sometimes it gets a little slippery and it can shift. So we'll be back when these are all dry. Okay, so we are all dry. And I just want to sand my edges a little bit. I'm just showing you different sanders that you can use that will do the trick, but because of all the scallops around these plates, I actually put a little sanding disc on my Dremel. So a couple of reasons why I'm doing this is if you don't have an exact fit when you glued it down, or if something shifted, just sand and it helps get rid of that ridge, gets rid of any drips of paint. And as well, oh, see there I'm pointing out that I forgot to put the gold around the rim, but I will show you how I fix that later. And again, I apologize that I'm out of frame sometimes. I am only using this system for a short while and then I'll be back to my regular space. So the other thing is when you're using white paint, the charring that's left on the side of a piece that is cut with a diode laser, it likes to come through your white or light colors a bit. So it's nice to be able to sand it down some. I wasn't worried about this having a crisp white edge, or I would have sanded it some more. Because it's vintage, you know how sometimes they can yellow a little bit, like plates are vintage china after, like when it's crazed, and yeah, you know what I'm talking about. So I wasn't worried about sanding it all the way down, but I did end up putting 3 coats of paint around the edges. So now we've got those already dried, glued, painted, and we are going to, you guessed it, Fineline Crackle. So a clean, dry brush. No water is going to touch that brush or your Fineline Crackle, okay? So let's get that on there. If you feel your brush dragging, add a little bit more. And make sure you're getting inside of the rim there and do the edges as well. Okay, so let that Fineline Crackle completely dry, and we are going to use another clean dry brush and apply step 2 and let that dry. Just don't let it go on too thick and pool because it will retain that amber color. I don't mind that sometimes, and it's okay a little bit here too. So now that this is all dry, you can see the crackle as the light hits it sometimes. And you can't see it very well on the camera, but there is crackle all around the edges and in the rims as well. So our next step is we're going to rub all over these pieces with clear wax. This will help us to be able to move around our next layer of wax easily, especially if we get too much on. We're using Rub and Buff Leaf Gold, I believe. I will put a list of everything I use down in the description. On the plate that I started with, or that I did off camera, I actually used clear wax. Then I did the Pentart antiquing wax, like the umber, and then the gold. But I felt like it was almost a smidge too yellow. You can't really see the difference on camera here, and it's perfect for that plate because of the white yellowish roses, but I didn't want that on these plates because I actually really like how white these are, so I wanted to maintain as much of that as possible. So all I'm doing is using Rub and Buff. So now, because I forgot to paint that inside rim before, I took my paper towel and my Q-tip finger, sorry, paper towel finger, and just rubbed it around the inside edges. You can also go in there with a Q-tip if you want a little bit more in. I'm using the Q-tip on the edge as well. And you see me use just a scruffy little brush around the edges. I just let it sit for a few minutes and buff it off and clean any excess up with a Q-tip. So putting that clear wax on first helps you be able to clean that up way easier. So the scalped edge was a little harder to keep it nice and neat and stay within that line. So I just took Q-tip or my little um, chalk tool to scrape away a little bit of the um, gold, and then just went around and fine-tuned it with a Q-tip there. So once these are done, you don't have to do anything more to them. The wax is a good enough finish for these. If you want, you could put a gloss varnish on it if you wanted them to be even glossier. I like the sheen that has been left. Like you get the wax dulls down the Fineline Crackle just a smidge, but it to me leaves the sheen that I like. So I hope you enjoyed this. I love how they turned out, and we'll see you next video. Bye.